It's time for Cats Talk Wednesday. Small town and big city joined forces. Vinny Hardy of Lynch, Kentucky, and Terry Brown of Louisville, Kentucky, team up to give you free-flowing, laid-back sports talk. Focus on Kentucky Wildcats, as well as pertinent information in the NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball.
And that's what we do week in and week out here on Cast Talk Wednesday, on Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, on the audio side, YouTube and Roku. If you want to tune in and see what you've been hearing, you can do that as well. Terry Brown there in his 49ers gear, Vinny Hardy here. For the second week in a row, TB, I think we're starting the show with a guest right off the bat. We had Muhammad Ahmad the other day covering the Bengals for Cleveland.com. Now we got from the Herald-Leader, Cameron Drummond, covering all things Kentucky Wildcats. And I got somebody to be miserable with on the NFL front as well. Cameron, TB, how's everybody doing this evening?
I think Terry's doing a little bit better than me, like you mentioned there. I think it's been a rough, I don't even know how many hours it's been, 72, 96. It's Sunday night. You know, I'm from Dallas originally, like huge Cowboys fan. Got like an autographed football like 5 feet away from me here. It's been rough. So Terry's probably doing a little bit better than me, but happy to be here nonetheless.
You know, I was thinking back, Vinny, the missus reminded me last year when the Niners beat the Cowboys, you also did a good job of bringing a guest on. So I couldn't be mean from the jump. So I ain't mad at you.
Trying to dull that knife blade a little
That's
bit.
right. You're like, oh, he's gonna be nice. We got a guest, but I know we got a lot of stuff to talk about more so than the football game. We're gonna get to it, but I know we got to talk some Cats.
And first of all, Cameron, since we're brothers in this, who's the autographed football? Who you got over there?
It's from a couple of years ago, actually, so it's not super relevant, but it's a couple of the offensive linemen. So it's Zach Martin, I think Tyron Smith's on it as well. I want to say maybe a center or two as well. So it's a little bit dated. It's not a Dak football, so that's the market value is still kind of high on it.
Hold up. Don't make me. I'm about to mute you. Hold on. I'm gonna mute you. Hold up, Terry. Now. Hold up. Zach Martin's gonna be a Hall of Famer. Tyron Smith's gonna be a Hall of Famer. Zach Martin's dad played for Kentucky, so I'm not saying
anything about it. Football. I'm sharing my football video. I don't know if you've seen this.
Okay, Terry.
It says 2TB, all my best, Joe Montana. So, but enough about that. Let's talk about the Cats. Let's talk about something to bring us all together. I'm not trying to spread us apart here. It's all about love and stuff.
All in the water, Terry Brown. Oh man, but Cameron, man, I think I still got this frog in my throat. Feel great, but sound horrible. Apologize. You came on Believe in Kentucky about a year or so ago, the other podcast I do. Back then, I think, was it strictly the women's basketball beat that you were doing now?
It was like women's basketball and essentially like Kentucky Olympic sports. So like the tennis team had a nice run, so covered them, like baseball, softball, that kind of stuff.
And now, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, still kind of rookie, but you still got the heavy hitters. Jerry Tipton retired, but you still got John Clay and Mark Story and those stalwart veterans. Ben Roberts is, not as old as them, but he's older than you. So, are you the rookie now? Or are you covering everything now? It's more than just women's and Olympics. You're kind of all over everything, right?
Yeah. So basically, with Jerry retiring and obviously rightfully so after giving like 4 decades of great service covering UK, Ben slotted up. Ben Roberts, who formerly covered recruiting and was like the secondary men's basketball reporter, slotted up to Jerry's role. So he's the big dog now. And I took over Ben's role. So essentially I'm mainly Kentucky basketball recruiting, kind of backing up Ben on just general Kentucky basketball stuff. But as you mentioned, John and Mark are still there. So every home game, it's all 4 of us. I go to a couple of the road games as well. So like I was at the Garden earlier this year for CBS Sports. I'll be in Athens like later, I guess next month for Georgia. So it's kind of crazy though, because I'm like just jumping into this. This is my first season on the men's beat and everything, paying attention to stuff. And then like when we're at home games at Rupp, like I turn to my right and people there have like a combined 75 years of like covering Kentucky basketball. Like John Clay's got this massive spreadsheet with like every single game ever like cataloged. So he could pull up, data from some 1993 game against LSU in like 2 seconds. It's crazy.
It is humbling when you're up there with those folks that have been doing it for a long time. It's like, wow. I mean, they just that encyclopedic knowledge, but covering the Olympic sports hasn't been that bad. I know that's, some folks kind of say, oh, but Olympic sports in Kentucky have been pretty darn good here lately.
Yeah, well, I was super fortunate last year in particular because, I was the Abby Steiner year. And I know, maybe not a ton of people on the day-to-day keep up with Kentucky track and field. But, I'd struggle to think of a program that at Kentucky that puts up, the number of Olympians, number of decorated people at world championships that have like, world records and stuff too. Like, the basketball program puts guys in the NBA, every year. The women's team put Ryan Howard as the #1 overall pick. But we're talking like gold medals at Olympics, world, championship level world records, gold medals, at international competitions. So it's pretty cool to get a look in at that last year and just see someone like be super dominant in their sport. She won what was essentially the Heisman of, collegiate track and field called the Bowerman. In between that, UK softball is good just about every year. I don't know how much people keep up with Kentucky rifle or that know that like rifle is a varsity sport at Kentucky, but they've won like 3 national championships in 5 years. So it was kind of cool as well, just to be one of the few people concentrating on some of the lesser known sports, especially because they compete at such a high level.
Absolutely. And you've been there with the Herald-Leader. We mentioned Mark Story, which we've had him on. Got to have him back on, but we get the privilege of voting for the Kentucky Sports Figure of the Year every year that he sends out. And I don't know. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but my ballot is pretty Kentucky Olympic heavy. I'll just say that based on the sports you mentioned and some of the people you already mentioned. I kind of lean that way when I voted.
Yeah, I kind of do the same thing. I, constructed my ballot, I guess, a week and a half ago. And I guess that comes out here in a couple of days, right? Like, I think the end of the month, maybe the 31st is when it's announced. Mm-hmm. But I always think I think second or third year I voted for that. I kind of like rewarding the Olympic sports and something like that. I just feel more of a, I guess, Kentucky connection when it's someone who either in one of those sports went to UK or is from Kentucky, and you're doing something like that on a truly international stage. It feels like a bit more impressive to me than putting like, I don't know, John Morant, somewhere on the ballot or Bam Adebayo or something. Or maybe I'm a huge Dallas Mavericks fan as well. So maybe that's that bias coming out. But yeah, I like that reward or that award as a chance to reward, people from those kind of sports and doing what they do.
And I don't know, sometimes I think I try to go into it. I think I'm differently every year. We've talked with Mark. There's no wrong way to do it. I know sometimes there's UK U of L squabbling as far as representation amongst the voters, but sometimes I think Leah Edmond one year might have been a little bit upset, but maybe there wasn't enough volleyball love in the top 10. But TB, while you were gone, we're talking about the Sports Person of the Year voting, and mine is kind of Olympic sport heavy this year. I sent it in the other day, and it's got a lot of Kentucky Olympic flavor to it.
It's hard when you have someone win the Bowerman Award not to recognize greatness. And I get it. Men's basketball, football, that runs everything, right? But I know what BBN Twitter was like during the Olympics when you got Abby Steiner and you got Sydney McLaughlin. Half of the women's, was it 4x100, 4x400? I can't remember. But they win gold, and 2 of the 4 are Kentucky Wildcats. And if you're going to puff out your chest, which rightfully so, then you have to kind of pay attention during the season. Like, you can't just men's basketball and football. As you can see behind me, I cover a little bit of everything. There's gymnastics and women's soccer. I'm all cats everything because, number one, most of the sports are competitive. A lot of these teams are ranked. We've got great athletes from top to bottom. So if you're just narrowly focusing on who's at Rupp and Kroger Field, you're missing out on a lot. Because Vinny and I have talked about, Cameron, I think Ryan Howard, we really underappreciated what she was doing. When you talk to other people in the know, because we had Maggie Hendricks that covers the WNBA and women's college basketball on, and she was raving about Ryan Howard. It's like, I mean, I know she got some accolades, but it's like she was Rookie of the Year in the WNBA, which may be one of the more elite professional sports we've got here in the country. And you look at softball, it's just a given they're going to make it to the regionals. Like, it's just a given. And gymnastics just the other day beat LSU.
Yo.
So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I tell folks all the time, if you say all cats everything, if that's what you're going to tweet out, you got to pay attention to everything else, right? So that's my 2 cents on that, Vinny. Sorry, I'm ranting about that, but it's just, you know, if you're going to be Kentucky's my school, then let Kentucky be your school for everything. That's how you finish number 9 in the Directors Cup.
Mm-hmm. Yo, no.
It's not like when we were in school, Vinny. It was men's basketball and
precipitous fall off the cliff.
That's right. Men's basketball was doing its thing, but everything else. But I'm sorry, I got a little long-winded, Cameron. I apologize.
No, that's usually my worst trait. So you're in good company here, I promise you.
Yeah, and so, like, you know, with that ballot, I just kind of was going through it, and I'm just gonna let the winner jump out at me. And me personally, I think Abby's gonna win it. I mean, as far as, but I mean, who knows how it is? But I think that's the winner. And I also look at, you know, some of those paragraphs are a little more impressive than others. Some of those paragraphs are mini books amongst the other little paragraphs. So you just keep accolade, championship. And I'm like, you know, that is impressive.
For me, it's like, okay, who did something really, really amazing? That's Abby, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you try to find nuggets of folks that don't get the accolades. Like, I know you kind of have to put Coach Cal on there, but he's got his, and recently it hasn't been great. So I get it. So I try to find some high school folks, some local folks, particularly like wrestling, who, you know, I had wrestled in high school. So I've got a soft spot when those people pop up and different things like that. So voting for that is, it's hard. It's hard to get down to 10.
Yeah.
So I you know, I've been railing against Hall of Fame voters and Oscar voters and all this kind of. It's not as easy as you think.
Yeah.
It really isn't. Even though the Hall of Fame people still make dumb decisions, but still.
Dale Murphy should have been in.
Dale Murphy should have been in a long time ago. But we're gonna talk about that, Vinny. Anyway, Cameron. So covering the Cats, can we transition to the game last night, which I think was probably the best showing that we've had all season. I mean, that run to end the first half and kind of start the second half was the difference. Now, Cameron, you weren't there at Vanderbilt, but I'm sure you watched the game, right?
Yeah. No, I got loaded up with a spicy chicken sandwich from Popeyes about 30 minutes before tip, and then settled in. And yeah, I mean, like, to your point, like, that it was remarkable because of the lack of drama and like the lack of stress in the game, right? Like, especially during this win streak, which 4 games in a row ties their season best from when they're winning a bunch of non-conference games from November into early December. But there was no real doubt that Kentucky was going to win this game. Like, Vandy hung with them for the first 10 or so minutes. Kentucky had a super good run, final 8 or so minutes of the first half, got that. I think it was a 7-point lead at halftime. And then just right from the jump to start the second half, came out and blitzed Vanderbilt, built that lead up to I think it was pretty close to 20 points at one point. You know, kind of kept their foot on the gas. Vanderbilt hit a couple deep threes. You know, Kentucky didn't really let that phase them. And put the game away pretty, you know, authoritatively. And you look at these recent games in the win streak. I mean, Tennessee came down to the wire. They're obviously an incredibly talented and good team. LSU still needed some, you know, that game in the first SEC win they had was nervy down the stretch when Kentucky missed some free throws. But you didn't see, you know, much of that, you know, in the Texas A&M game. That excuse me, that was put away kind of handily. You know, really ever since they won that Tennessee game, Kentucky's shown a pretty good feel, both in terms of what lineups they want to use, players in, you know, specific roles, executing those roles well, and really putting away teams when they've had the opportunity to do so. I mean, I know Georgia was a poor first half, but that second half, really didn't get too close down the stretch, and a lot of that's from Sheboy. But yeah, I guess to my original point, it was a stress-free kind of non-eventful win, which Kentucky really hasn't had too many of this season, especially against power conference opponents. And yeah, it's Vanderbilt, but I think you definitely take that. And especially the way the game was, it was such a balanced game. This wasn't 37-24 from Oscar. This was Oscar doing 15 and 13 that he can do on most nights, that you almost expect from him on most nights. This was Jacob Toppin getting a double-double, being super active around the rim, which you're coming to expect from him, recent games, and especially playing alongside Sheboy and giving that kind of production, which we haven't seen a ton of from Toppin in his UK career. Xavier Wheeler, gets a real good feel-good game, came into the game, completely changed the pace of it. Cason Wallace did good once he learned how to, adapt and get that pace flowing a bit more. Antonio Reeves and CJ Frederick making shots from deep like they were expected to. So really, you really can't have too many complaints. And especially going into a game like Kansas, both teams are trending in super opposite directions. I don't think John Calipari can have too much to complain about after that last night.
So a follow-up question, those of us on BBN Twitter, we know we've got what do they call them, the basketball Benny lineup, taking Wheeler out. I want to get your thoughts on this, Cameron. My whole thing is we get caught up in these numbers, right? And I don't want to sound like an old guy about analytics, but one thing you have to keep in mind is you're still dealing with people. And although the numbers say Xavier is not part of the basketball Benny line, like he still has a role to play, but it's a process to get guys to understand what that new role is going to be. And my whole mindset is if we know we're going to need Wheeler at some point, and we will, and he did change the game when he came in yesterday, and he's going to have that, then you can't just bench him from the start and just because then you've lost him, So I think the lineups that we're seeing, this team can be better than what we have seen.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember kind of like the interpersonal relationships dynamic of this all, right? Like if you were to just look at it, on face value, who would you rather have to rely on in terms of someone whose role has been demoted or who's going from starter to bench player? Would you rather have that be Cason Wallace, who's a younger player without any college experience, without any SEC experience before this season? Would you rather that be Xavier Wheeler, someone who's kind of been through the fire before, maybe is older, maybe has a bit more, not saying Cason Wallace isn't mature, but just someone who's, maybe gets it a bit more, right? And I think that's a big part of it. Someone who's been through a transfer, who's already figured out how to acclimate himself from one style of team and one setup to another one. So I think that's important to remember as well, is that Xavier Wheeler is maybe of anyone on this team best equipped to handle something like this. And to your point about, needing him, I mean, there's throughout the course of a basketball season, there's going to be moments when everybody's been needed. I mean, we haven't spoken that much about Adu Thiero the last couple of games, but there was a stretch there where he was an incredibly important piece of the lineup.
Absolutely. Against Tennessee, he played well.
And may figure to be, later on. You never know what happens with suspensions, injuries, what have you. And so a game like last night for Xavier Wheeler is super important for so many reasons, not the least of which is to remind people that in the right setup and in the right, minutes doses, he's an incredibly effective player. He brings something completely different to the table than Cason Wallace. I mean, the fact that teams will let Xavier Wheeler shoot threes kind of at will because, that's not on the scouting report. Yeah, that holds Kentucky back on offense in certain ways. And yeah, maybe his defense at times can be exploited. But at the same time, he brings, so much to the table in terms of being a floor general, a change of pace guy, right, an experienced player, a savvy player. And it was funny, we were talking off air about, how I'm on Louisville radio each week. And so the guys on 680 are asking me about Kentucky and stuff. And so the last couple of weeks, some of the narrative has been, what happens at the guard spot? Is this Wallace's job permanently? Xavier Wheeler, is he going to be playing 37 minutes? Once he loses his job, is he going to be playing 5 minutes? And in the answer, somewhere in between, right? He's probably not a guy you want on the court for incredibly heavy minutes and probably not in the starting role, especially with the way things have gone right now. But he's not a guy who's only going to be getting 3 or 4 minutes a night, right? Like he's more important to what this team does than Lance Ware. So at some point you find that happy balance, and Kentucky's, right in the process of finding that right now. But it could come a case where, if there's a first-round NCAA tournament game and Casey Wallace is having a poor shooting night, like we've seen a couple times this year, that Kentucky has to completely shift gears. And the one thing you want to be as a basketball team, especially in a sport where so much variance occurs with the big postseason event that determines championships, is you want to be adaptable. You want to have multiple game plans, and something that sunk Kentucky last year against St. Peter's and seemingly sinks them, a lot of times in the SEC tournament as well, is just that lack of adaptability, the lack of ability to shift from plan A to B or C. And it took Kentucky a little while to figure out what plan A was this year, but now that they're here, you maybe think that B and C is a bit more attainable just based on the pieces they have and how they can adjust things on the fly.
To your point about, is Xavier going to play 37 minutes? Is he going to play 3 minutes? Last night was about as balanced as it gets. He plays 22 minutes last night. And to your point about him being older, as old as you can be and still be young, at 22, he's the oldest of the young dudes on this squad, and he's been through a lot. And, handling this adversity better than Casey Wallace, who is, first year as a freshman and probably never been benched in his life. So maybe he is more equipped. Been at Georgia, he played for Tom Crean, for God's sake. So the dude has been through some mess. He knows some troubled days. So he is equipped to handle it.
That was my first year at Indiana. For anyone who didn't know, I went to Indiana University for undergrad from 2016 to 2020. So first off, I'm 25 now, so I don't like that comment about 22 being as old as you can while still being young.
Hey, you just getting started with that. You just getting started with that, man. Wait till you're 45.
There you go.
But my first year at Indiana was 2016-17. I didn't cover the team. I was just a freshman going to games and stuff. But that was Tom Crean's last year at Indiana, and that was the year where I think Indiana was 4 in an early AP poll. They beat Kansas and Hawaii. They beat UNC at home, and then they started losing to Fort Wayne and Northwestern, and I think they made the NIT, refused to play at home, and then lost at Georgia Tech. So yeah, Tom Crean teams usually have a lot of stress and stuff like that happening. So that's a good point you make about Xavier being in a
Tom Crean needs to, whatever his earnings, he needs to be claimed as a dependent by Dwayne Wade, because that dude. Without D Wade being D Wade, woo, buddy.
He milked that udder dry too. I mean, he's still he got jobs off of that. He got the Indiana job from that. He got the Georgia job from that. I mean, he milked that for all it was worth too. And
good on him though. That's the American dream. That's hitting the lottery. But as we look ahead, Cameron, what's kind of your prognosis as the team starts to come together? Like you said, we had a game where it wasn't a nail biter. Last night's game, I'm telling my wife, I'm in Iowa, of all places at the moment. That's where I moved to, Vinny. I know. But last night was basically an average Kentucky game for me. You're playing an opponent that's in the SEC, not as good, and they come out on fire at home. You take their first punch, and then you just get that separation. And then most of the second half is all right, we got stuff to, because that game was fast last night.
Yeah.
It was like the referees had a dinner reservation. We need, those late tips. I looked up, I'm like, that was not even 2 hours. But looking ahead, they're kind of figuring some things out. Oscar is showing maybe he doesn't need to do everything he was trying to do, because we've got some complementary pieces around him, especially when the shots are falling and you see that confidence. And that's one of those things, Vinny, there's no numerical number for a confident team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the refs thing, just because, that was the least amount of free throws made or free throws attempted in the history of John Calipari's teams at Kentucky. They were 1 of 2 from the line. And I think the record before that was 3 makes and 6 attempts. So this was, by far the least they were relying on free throws or anything like that, which is, good for all of us here in the East Coast that had to go through a 9 p.m. tip. And there's way too many of those still left on the schedule. But
I remember those days.
I'll save my thoughts on the scheduling people for a little while. But yeah, I think consistency is what you want, right? We've seen this team at its lowest we've seen the problems in November and December that just came from fluctuations or, not performing well against the teams you were supposed to perform well against, having a great shooting night against a North Florida, shooting horribly from the field and scoring 53 points against UCLA, up and down things like that. And there's reasons for that in terms of figuring out the lineup. I mean, Calipari will be quick to tell you about all the injuries and the flood and, things being in flux and Oscar maybe taking a little while longer to get into shape following that offseason knee procedure. But I think that's a good point you make about, Oscar maybe realizing there's some more complementary pieces. This doesn't have to be something that he has to carry himself. I mean, I remember the Yale game. I think he had something like 30 and 20 or something remarkable where we all kind of looked at each other like, yeah, great Oscar performance, but if this is what's needed to carry this team over the line against a Yale, that's not a good sign of things to come.
Right.
Even against Georgia, where they were trailing at halftime, needed an incredible, all-time performance from Oscar Tshiebwe to carry you over the line at home over a very middling, nothing special Georgia team. So you want to see more games like this Vanderbilt game where it's not completely reliant on a performance that might not be replicable, where it's a spread out team effort. Nobody has to do too much. Kentucky takes care of business. I'm not sure how much, honestly, Saturday night will be a reflection of this because, people will have the game circled, final SEC Big 12 Challenge game, Kansas having lost 3 straight, defending national champions, still being top 10. Like there's a lot of allure and a lot of, kind of name recognition and stuff that goes with that. And it'll be great for Kentucky's NCAA tournament resume. Don't get me wrong, because that's still pretty thin. So Kentucky would do well to take advantage of that. But you almost want to see this kind of performance, this, business-like performance against other SEC teams and against other SEC teams that Kentucky should be beating. So, not tripping up in a game at Ole Miss that they should be winning just like last night, not tripping up at a Mississippi State team that isn't as good as people maybe thought they were after non-conference, not tripping up against Georgia, not tripping up against, either of the Florida games, avoiding those quad 3, quad 4 losses and picking off a quad 1 win here or there, just to make sure that you're into the tournament. And I'm not sure if this is the, massive figure it out moment for Kentucky. We may have some more roller coaster up and down, some more waves to ride this season. But I mean, right now, considering how low things were after that South Carolina game, considering the morale around the program as well, the thoughts and things that are being said about players and John Calipari's future at Kentucky, we're not at a complete 180 yet, but we're reversing course. We're at like maybe 90 degrees or so. And so they just need to keep turning that corner and keep going in the right direction.
Yeah, and y'all mentioned complementary pieces. Y'all have mentioned confidence. Consistency can be thrown in there as well if they continue to do what they're doing consistently. And confidence you can't look any further than Jacob Toppin to see where he was when things were at their bleakest. And now look how he was playing last night. And as far as his confidence and the way he's playing, he was flying all over the court all night long. He got another double-double. He started off the game with the scoring and was just, blocking shots.
He looked comfortable.
Yeah.
That was the thing. He just looked comfortable.
Yeah.
Like so many times he gets the ball and there's that hesitation. But the last couple of games, he's making a move.
Mm-hmm.
Dribble, am I passing? And that goes for everybody. There's that lack of hesitation.
Yeah.
That's what was wrong with the offense. I don't think it's anything about what Cal's running. I know you need to have shooters and all this kind of stuff, but the ball needs to move with a purpose. What are you doing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that to me has been the night and day difference. And the shooters aren't hesitating in shooting. And again, Oscar, he doesn't have to do it all because I agree with you, Cameron. Look, I'm a Lakers fan. LeBron had 40-something points last night, and they still lost to the Clippers.
I got gripes with that too. I got gripes.
But Vinny, I talk about there's that stretch, was it 2 years ago, whatever, with the Lakers, and I'm like, they won like 4 or 5 straight games, but LeBron had to get 50 in like 5 or straight. Like that's not what it should take to win. We're a little bit older than you, Cameron, but I think when you look at like the Bulls during Michael Jordan's heyday, the Bulls were the Bulls because Michael Jordan did not have to go for 55 every night. I mean,
you're preaching to the choir here. I'm a Mavs fan, so I'm watching Luka Doncic have to do 50, 15, and 11, and we're scraping a win over like the depleted Suns or like the Timberwolves or something. So like, yeah, I've seen those one-man shows, man. They're not a lot of fun to watch.
Right, and that's what happened with the Mavericks before with Dirk.
Yeah.
You know, way back when Nash left, and it was just Dirk, and he's out there, he's MVP, but you're like, who are these other dudes?
Yeah.
And then they round up a bunch of old guys, Jason Terry and Tyson Chandler and Jason Kidd, and then they beat the Heatles. So there you go.
I can start naming the entire 2011 title team if you want me to. You know, David was on the team. Caron Butler had a knee injury in Milwaukee, so he didn't play. Peja Stojakovic, Brian Cardinal. You know, I'm just gonna start naming guys now.
Stojakovic was on that team?
Yeah, I think he was a mid-season acquisition, I want to say. Wow. And yeah, I was rewatching a couple of those finals games, you know, not too long ago, and he was just one game in Miami. Might have been game 2 where they had the insane comeback, or maybe it was the closeout game in game 6, and he was just burying threes like an assassin.
Wow.
But yeah, I won't inundate this podcast with too much more 2011.
Well, my quick beef is, I know it's the Lakers run LA, Clippers don't matter. I get it. Steve Ballmer, Clipper Dale. Look, everybody likes the Lakers. Watching Sports Center, the highlight of that game, the Clippers win by 20, and it was all LeBron highlights. LeBron. Oh, this jumper cut the lead to 16. Oh, wow. Okay. He scored 48 points. They showed like one Paul George.
Perhaps if the Clippers ever made it to the NBA Finals, just a finals appearance, then maybe they would get some love.
I'm
just saying.
Just give them. They can at least own the highlight. Y'all own the city. Let them own a highlight where they win by 20 and still not let the Lakers.
All right, we need to move on. Nobody's here for your griping.
Guys, they're both still behind Sacramento in the state though. Yeah. I mean, the Kings have been so much fun to watch this year. I'll say I'm a huge NBA League Pass guy, like Mike Brown, the Kings. I didn't like Sabonis at all when he was in Indiana. I like him a lot now because he like fits in better. De'Aaron Fox is a dog. Like they're so much fun.
And the refs gave the Lakers the game against Sacramento. It was like 2002 all over again.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, they cheated the Kings then a couple weeks ago because De'Aaron Fox did not charge or whatever it was.
Okay, all right. I didn't know you're gonna start bashing the Lakers.
Conspiracy is 20 years later. Here we are, same old stuff.
I was gonna say to go back to what started this all. You're talking about, Jacob Toppin looking, way more comfortable in what he's doing, which is interesting because we've seen him do what he's doing now, but we haven't seen him do it alongside Oscar Tshiebwe or complementary to Oscar, right? Where Toppin's able to still get his double-double or be active on both ends of the court, play good defense, be crashing the offensive glass, but do it while Oscar is still there being his presence. We saw it a bit to start the season when Tshiebwe was out hurt. We saw it in spurts when Tshiebwe wasn't having his best game or he was in foul trouble or the double, triple teams were really affecting him. But now that they're doing it at the same time, like that's a real key piece to what Kentucky's doing on both ends of the court. And for Toppin's like journey in particular, I think it's interesting because we saw him kind of reach a high point in that Louisville game. I think he had a double-double. I think it was a career high in points, like really good performance. And I think John Calipari said after that game, okay, watch. Now he's going to do it against better teams because basically every team is better than Louisville. But then he went through that lull again, right? They're bad. They're real bad. They're real bad.
They are.
Yeah.
That warms my soul, but yeah, they're bad. Yeah,
they're real bad. I actually have tickets to go watch them play Georgia Tech start of February, more out of morbid curiosity than anything. I want to see what that environment's like there at the Young Center. But yeah, so we saw him have that great performance, and then we saw the dip in form again, right? He wasn't good against Alabama. I think he sustained some injuries. The right shoulder thing, I think, kept him out of that South Carolina game. So, there was all the reason in the world for Jacob Toppin to kind of fade into the background, become the player who lost his position on this Kentucky team. Mm-hmm. But instead, we've seen the opposite happen. Stock go massively up, have 3 or 4 consecutive really strong performances, doing it to complement Oscar, playing probably the best basketball, the most consistent basketball of his Kentucky career right now. So he's a pretty good case study just when you look at the way this team turned around after everything seemed really bleak. Just an example of how Kentucky has somehow found a way to get production, players knowing their roles, executing their specific roles, and then the winning follows as a team, with that.
And I think to that point, we knew at the beginning of the season what Wheeler was going to do. We had an idea of what Oscar was capable of. And, Vinny's talked about it before. Cal warned us before the season, hey, there's a lot going on here. And I think with basketball, my whole thing is it's all about trust. One of those things you can't measure. And when Cal teams have had that turnaround, it's that trust in the play call. If I pass it to you, the ball's going to find me when I'm open. That's just a level of trust. And I think we're seeing that where Oscar's trusting his teammates and his teammates are trusting in him to not go 1-on-4 all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't have to do that. We've got guys that can knock down shots. We've got Toppin that can clean up things as well. So that trust and understanding what they're doing, that to me, I'm with you, Cameron. Not a full, 180, but I am more encouraged than I was 3 weeks ago when that whole week was just that was a rough week, Vinny.
It was. Yeah, South Carolina was. That was a blow, and it had you thinking like. And we've seen 2014. We've seen turnarounds. We've seen teams that can't buy a road game to save their life, and we've seen turnarounds take place at later points in the season than this. But I'm like, I don't know if this is salvageable. That's how bad it was just a few weeks ago. It really was.
Well, even last night after the Vanderbilt game, John Calipari gave one of his more kind of revealing and open press conferences. Ben Roberts, John Clay from the Herald-Leader were there. And so if you go back and watch it, either on YouTube or I think we have an article up on the Kentucky.com, which is just like the complete transcript of it. Cal talked about how that game was a crisis, like straight up said South Carolina was a crisis. That was their come to Jesus moment, right? Yeah. Where they figured out, okay, this isn't working. They had, I guess, probably everyone and their mother now knows about this, player-led team meeting where Cal wasn't there, but I think Tim Coleman was there. I think Orlando Antigua was there, where everyone was pretty open and, frank with each other saying, okay, we need to do this better. We need you to do this. I need to do this, start holding each other accountable. And a way that's kind of manifested, and you can see that, and Cal talked about it last night as well, is just the purpose with which people are playing in their roles. I think he used an example where like early in the season, no one was really trusting of each other. They didn't really know, how to rely on their teammates. So they'd get the ball, they'd dance with it a bit, do a little dribble package, not do anything meaningful, pass the ball along to the next guy. Okay, he's not trusting anyone else to make a cut
right
or receive the ball. So he's going to catch it, mess around with it for a little bit, pass along to the next guy. Whereas now there's movement with a purpose. Everyone catches the ball or has an idea of where they're going to pass it. The system's running a bit better. Even I think there's that final after timeout play last night where they run the lob to Shebway around the back. That was a great example of everyone fulfilling their role on a certain play. Sabir distributing, Kaysen making a quick pass, Reeves, punishing a guy who closes out on him too hard, delivering a pass through the gap, Oscar Shebway screening and rolling towards the basket, Toppin running all around the backside, finishing out the lob play.
Yeah, so you had a diagram of that on Twitter that I saw, and I was like, that was a perfect play, and it just encapsulated, because that team doesn't run that prior to South Carolina. Like, that doesn't happen.
And just the trust factor within players. I mean, I think there's a strong argument to mention that one of the worst plays of the season was that final after timeout that Tom Izzo drew up for Michigan State in that Champions Classic, where Kentucky did not know how to defend it. Now I feel confident saying Kentucky defends that significantly better, just because of trusting each other, knowing where each other is going to be on the court. So yeah, it's been a complete 180 just in terms of guys on the team believing in other guys, allowing them to do their thing. And just being more comfortable. And so it's not really a surprise that as a whole, the team is functioning better because each guy is more comfortable with the other individuals around them.
And it takes time for that. I mean, that's one of those things you can't microwave that. We talked about the 2011 finals with, the Heat and the Mavericks, and you could tell just from watching that, like the Mavericks kind of knew what they were doing, but the Heat were like, hey, we got LeBron, we've got Wade, we got Bosh, we'll figure it out. Well, even at that level, it takes time to just figure it out. And those are the best of the best, right? Even though they made it to the finals, when it's I'm trying to think of a PC way to, when it's put up a shut up time, you've got to be able to trust those guys. And that fracture with the Heat is why they lost in 2011, and also having Dirk go berserk. But that's exactly what you're talking about, is you've got to have trust in what you're doing on both ends of the court.
And that play before the half, I mean, it was so good and gratifying. Cal just fist bumped and dipped. He didn't even talk to Alyssa Lang at halftime. He just drove straight to the locker room, said, "I'm out of here."
That's right.
But switching just real quick to the women's team, Cameron, before we let you go, been some struggles, been some ups and downs, been some bumps in the road. Just what is your observation, if you've been to any games or covered any games? Kind of a long-winded question. And two, just you have a little insight into the Dre Edwards mess that happened that was so I don't know the word, but Dexter had to get up here and be like, y'all need to leave my wife alone. I don't even say nothing, but I've had enough of this foolishness. So any insight into the back and forth with her since she went on down to Baylor and all the stuff that's going on, and how big a distraction has that been on the burden on the season as a whole?
Yeah, well, I'll start by, I guess, breaking down this year's team, and I've been to a few games. I think I saw them play Ohio at home. I've tried to catch as many on TV as I could. I covered the U of L game at Rupp Arena where they played them. I really thought this was going to be the year they snapped that winning streak, wrote like a huge preview article on it, and then didn't happen, so it made me look like a fool. Quick aside, I always seem to pick this wrong because I picked Louisville to win the Governor's Cup last year. Didn't happen. I picked Louisville to win the Governor's Cup again this year. Didn't happen. And then, so I need to stop predicting. I think I predicted Kentucky to beat Michigan State and then Tennessee to beat Kentucky, like on radio as well. So people need to stop asking me to predict things because I'm always wrong.
It's a crapshoot.
But yeah, so I've looked at a couple games this year. We actually just hired a new reporter specifically focused on the women's team for the Herald-Leader. Her name's Caroline Makauskas. She's been doing a great job, has watched a couple games, and is just getting started. But yeah, season long, it's been a struggle for them. And I mean, there's natural things. One is kind of the same thing that's plagued the men's team, which is just having so many new players, right? They brought in so many transfers. Granted, they had college experience, but still never played with each other. Brought in a huge freshman class as well. Some players were able to contribute kind of right away. Kennedy Cambridge has earned the trust of Kyra pretty quickly, has been in some big moments. And then some like Tiana Heron, who unfortunately had to have that open heart surgery before the season. And she was the crown jewel of that recruiting class. Kentucky for a long time, and again this year, has really missed a physical center post presence at the rim, someone who can go up against those tall physical players that South Carolina has, that Tennessee usually has, that LSU has now. So missing her is a huge loss. I don't think that can be, stated enough. Not to mention the fact that you're not really sure what you're going to get from her maybe when she recovers. I mean, she had open heart surgery. Who's to say what she looks like in the future? So those things, sit as they may, that's difficult enough to deal with as a basketball team in a conference like the SEC. And the three-point shooting has, not been good enough this year at all. It's been non-existent. They're ranking in the low 200s, maybe even in the 300s after a couple nights ago in the country in terms of three-point shooting. So that outside shot isn't falling consistently. Robin Benton's doing her best. I think she scored double figures every game this season. But I think they found it pretty difficult to adjust to all the newness, to adjust to life after Ryan Howard, to life after all those transfers, right? I think they accounted for something like more than 60% of scoring, rebounding, assists, blocks. Really, you had Jada Walker, who was so good last year as a freshman, but she was really the only person who came in from last year's team with an understanding of things. And Kyra Elsie's even playing a lot differently this year than last year. They have more bodies. They're pressing a bit more defensively. They want to run a bit more on offense. And sometimes that, creates issues just when shots aren't falling. So we'll talk a lot about how defense affects offense and vice versa. So just a lot of issues there. And the SEC is just a really good basketball league, right? Like there's so many good teams in it.
There's no nights off. Yeah.
Yeah. Tennessee is having a down year this year, and the SEC is still probably up there with the Big Ten in women's basketball, one of the best in the country. And to the Dre Edwards point you make, that's certainly like not something you're expecting to happen, middle of the season, right? As a distraction. And I think that came the same day as they were playing down in Georgia, had a very winnable game that they fell short of. And as far as that stuff goes, I mean, I think it's been laid out pretty well as well. Just the fact that this was kind of known to all parties, right? That the agreement was in place for the transfer. It was her second transfer, so she wasn't going to be able to get eligible immediately. She would have to, I guess, sit out a year or graduate from Kentucky, which, according to what's been released, hasn't happened yet. So obviously not a distraction you want on a game day, let alone as part of the season. And I think as well, just it's been interesting to see how Kyra Elsie has molded this team as well, because she came in under very difficult circumstances with Matthew Mitchell stepping away, but she didn't inherit really any of her players. She was an assistant coach, she recruited, but those players were there playing Matthew Mitchell's style of basketball, right? Ryan Howard was there with a completely different cast of players. So this is I guess the third year now where Kyra Elsie's really had to kind of reinvent the team, and there's going to be growing pains that go along with that. So she's not. It would be disappointing for them to continue the stretch they're on. I think they're 1-6, 1-7 in the SEC. So it's not looking good, but it's not necessarily like she's on the hot seat of getting fired or anything like that. She just won an SEC tournament, last year for the first time in 40 years. So there's a championship in Lexington because of Kyra Elsie. So there's been goodwill built up. She'll have time to figure this out. Maddie Shear's been really impressive this season as a transfer from Oregon, the former Kentucky Miss Basketball. So it may take some time, but yeah, certainly not the season they were looking for so far. And it's not going to get much easier with the rest of the SEC season to go as well. And that being said, we saw them be really bad for a long time last year and somehow find some gear toward the end of the season, won 6 straight. I was in Nashville for the entire SEC tournament run, had to keep rebooking my hotel because I was booking it for one night at a time. I'd be packing my stuff up. Oh, they'd win again. Book it again.
There you go.
And even this Kentucky men's season, like how many people would say, that we'd be at the point we are now after that South Carolina game. So things can change pretty quickly, in college basketball. It'll be pretty difficult. It'll be a tough task for them to completely turn things around. But especially having so many players on the team now that are juniors or freshmen that will be coming back next year, or you expect to come back next year at least. I think there's still a lot of intrigue and a lot that can be learned for this season for Kentucky. You never want to punt on a season, right? But building toward the future, a lot of these players will be back in similar roles next year. So maybe a good learning experience for them to figure out what works and what doesn't the rest of this season.
Absolutely, man. Good stuff. Appreciate all the knowledge, all the insight. First time on here with us, but we'll definitely have to get you back on when your schedule permits, man. We appreciate you taking time to hop on here and chop it up with us. And
yeah, this has been fun, Cameron. We need to have you on again. Not bad for an Indiana grad.
Well, can we agree to do it next time after a Cowboys win, or at least sometime buried in the off season where I don't got to stare at a Niners jersey this long?
Yes, absolutely. And we set this up a few weeks ago, and oh boy, here we go.
I'm just saying, no, I'm being nice to Cameron, but when you step away, Cameron, I'm gonna be mean. But
I'll tune in for the end then. I want to see how.
Yeah, Vinny know he got it coming. That's why he brings on guests, because he know he got it coming.
Hey, to be fair, Cam, I reached out to you a few weeks ago, and you said let's do it for the 25th. This was like January 4th. So this was before the game happened, and it's just lined up that way.
I was planning for us to lose 22-20 to Tom Brady. I wasn't expecting to make it this far.
Oh man, appreciate you, man, and
thank you, Cameron. We appreciate it. We'll see you on them Twitter streets.
That's right. See Drummond 97, Herald-Leader, Kentucky Sports. Check out all of Cameron's content right there, everybody. We definitely appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Nah, thank y'all. Y'all be good now.
Appreciate it, sir.
See ya.
Cameron Drummond from the Herald-Leader. Appreciate that, man. Young fella, young rookie out there, rookie-ish with Mark Story and all them. Oh, look, I'm going to go ahead and I don't know if it's being nice, but I figured I'd go ahead and do this, get a little bit of sound. We don't do much sound and nothing like that, but we'll throw a little sound in here from Sunday. So here we go. I think the question is about that Kittle catch. Here we go.
Explosives can jumpstart you better than anything, and he definitely wasn't the primary on that, and they defended the play very well, and Brock came back to the inside, and Kittle just saw an opening and went down there and Brock let it rip, and hell of a job seeing him in that spot. And then Kittle made a hell of a catch.
Yeah. Congratulations to TB and the Niners. Let me be gracious and defeat. And
let's talk about all the games. For the record, let me be very clear. I traveled to Louisville this weekend to Wu-Tang Day. We talked about it last week. His mother passed away, and I had every intention of going to the funeral. So the plane leaving Iowa on Friday got to the gate late and then had to get de-iced. So I had an hour between my flights in Chicago. So long story short, I missed that flight and had to spend the night in Chicago at the O'Hare Hilton, which, okay, not great, but missed the funeral, got into Louisville Saturday around 11. I was able to hang out with Mama B, saw the girls, got some indies, and then had to get up Sunday to fly back. Got to the Louisville airport 6 a.m., and then it starts to snow.
In Louisville?
In Louisville.
Okay.
So it starts to snow, and they got to do their piece. And I'm like, I am not going to make my flight to Charlotte. Because I was supposed to, for whatever reason, I was supposed to go from Louisville to Charlotte to Des Moines. So I'm like, all right, this plane, I'm going to miss it. But I'm like, okay, do I want to hang out in Louisville or do I want to hang out in Charlotte? I said, let me hang out in Charlotte let me hang out in Louisville because I'm like, if things go sideways, I just go back to Mama B's, right? Like, depending on weather, like, all right. So the next flight, now, granted, look, I'm there at 6 a.m. The next flight is 3:45. So I was from 6 a.m. to 3:45 before I flew out to Charlotte. Get to Charlotte, got a 3-hour layover.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. So I got there about 5:30, I think. I can't remember. Yeah, it's all running together now. So I found a spot to start watching the game.
Yeah.
And I'm getting into it, and I'm like, I keep checking because like I can't miss this flight, right? So I'm like, man, all right. So found a couple other 49ers fans. Dude had a Bosa jersey on for another guy with a 49ers hat. And, that's how I watched the first half, was at the hotel, well, not the hotel bar, but one of the places in the Charlotte airport. And I'm like, I got to get on this plane, man. I think I texted you, like, I got to get on the plane, and I can't go 0 dark 30. I was like, there's no way I'm going to make it on this plane. So American Airlines, luckily I got T-Mobile. You can get free Wi-Fi on the American Airlines. So I'm watching the ESPN app, and God bless my lovely wife. She's texting me details during the game.
Man.
That's how I watched the second half. I need to find her description of the Kittle catch because I didn't see it. I'm just watching. You know how you watch the ESPN app, second down, 10, blah, 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 catch by Kittle. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And she all caps me Kittle. And I'm like, what? So I scrambled to get to Twitter to see the replay. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I think I sent you a picture too. My seatmate next to me, because it was a jam-packed flight, thought I was going to stroke out because as we were talking with Cameron earlier, so you know me, I clean when my teams are playing. I'm doing something.
Airport was spick and span.
Well, that's what I told Kate, because I was like, I'm gonna have to find something to do because when the kickoff starts, I'm just fidgeting because I'm looking for something to do. Well, second half, I'm watching it via the ESPN app, and I'm in my seat. My watch sends me the alert, basically like your heart rate is high and you're just sitting. Is everything okay? Hell no, it's not okay. So because there's a lag time in the ESPN app, I'm having Kate send me down, distance, and time on that drive for that 49ers field goal. Because I'm like, all right, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. But anyway, that's how I watched the game. And when the game was over, I was like, whew. Luckily, we were some people noticed me. And since we're flying back to Iowa, a lot of people are Kittle fans. So there was a dude across the aisle. I had to give him updates as well about what's going on, not how I planned on watching the game. I've watched the game since then. But that was fun. Got home, back to my house a little after 11 Central Time, so a little after midnight Eastern Time. So 6 a.m. Eastern to 12 midnight. I was either on a plane or in the airport. So not great.
Yeah.
Would not recommend it. Did get some barbecue at the Charlotte airport. Not half bad. But anyway, about the games. First off, Bengals fans, I'm tired of Bengals fans.
Whoa.
New money, get out of my face. New Bengals fans are like Gonzaga fans. Oh, y'all just got here? Like Joe Burrow was their all-time playoff winning quarterback with 5 playoff wins. Hell, Brock Purdy got 2. Jimmy G got like 7. Yeah, when he tied the record or beat the record with 4 postseason wins, I'm like, well, hell, Joe Montana got 4 Super Bowl. Like, we are not the same. But good for them. Whatever. Cincinnati's been terrible for a long time. Buffalo, we should have known Buffalo was fraudulent. We should have known
after that Miami game.
I mean, the Miami game, they gave it took. I can't even think of the quarterback's name that Miami was playing.
Skylar Thompson.
Anyway, and they took all. Buffalo was fraudulent. Like, I think Josh Allen is good, but what we saw 2 years ago is his peak. I don't think he's going to get to that again. And there's not a knock on him. That's not saying the Bills can't do better. But I think that was his peak.
Might be, yes.
And so yay for the Bengals. I mean, good for them.
Our guy, we just talked, Muhammad Ahmad, talked about going to Arrowhead as a fan and hoping to go back as a journalist. So that, as you say, yay, verily, it came to pass. So
yay,
happy that Muhammad gets to go back to Arrowhead now on assignment for work. And he talked about how surreal that would be. So I'm sure when he gets back in there,
it's going to be different. You going in the media entrance versus going in the fan entrance.
Yeah.
Look, Patrick Mahomes is, when we start talking about quarterbacks in the NFL, the line starts after Patrick Mahomes. I don't give a damn what anybody else does in one particular game. It starts after Patrick Mahomes. It just does. People can get mad, whatever. But it's Patrick Mahomes. The dude is just different. Even though I slow talked him when we had Lee Steinberg on, but not bringing that up. I mean, the Chiefs, 5 straight title games. That is insane. Everything, obviously not having won them all, but hey, what they're doing in Kansas City is something different.
I hope he's healthy enough. I hate he got hurt because he was balling.
He was balling. Like,
I hate to see him get hurt, especially that type of injury for him. He was still making jump throws, but he was using the opposite foot. And Chris Collinsworth put it best. He said he's superhuman. Now he's having to do human stuff,
right?
Because he's injured. I'm pulling for them because, like you said, I'm not as tired of the Bengals fans as you, but the Bengals Burrow is 3-0 against Mahomes. So I hope, look, Patrick, beat them and stop all this nonsense.
And I get it. I get it, Bengals fans. Cincinnati's been terrible for a long time. Laughably terrible. And then they became laughably mediocre when they used to play the Texans on the first Saturday of the playoffs, and you'd be at B-Dub, be like, oh, yeah, there's an NFL playoff game. I get it. I get it, Bengals fans. But, everybody's against this. No. When it comes to NFL, ain't nobody really thinking about the Bengals. I mean, that's just my 2 cents. So, and I think this whole nobody believed on us, just because somebody picked another team to win doesn't mean they don't believe in you. That's not the same thing.
Yeah.
And look, you've got a great quarterback, Cincinnati. You've got great receivers, but you barely beat Baltimore.
Yeah.
And then Josh Allen just has forgotten. It's like his peak performance was probably that divisional game last year against the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
It may not get better than that.
Went blow for blow.
Right.
And Bomani, we both listened to his podcast, and he was slow to come around, and then he was like, okay, let me give him his props. And, Allen worked on his accuracy, and he did all this stuff and all these improvements. And well, maybe he can't replicate that year. You're right.
He gave away the game, tried to give away the game against the Dolphins. So,
sloppy with the rock, boy. Sloppy with the rock.
And so for me, I've rewatched the Cowboys 49ers game. And here's the thing. I know people are listening to us. Vinny, I love everybody that tweets. I love everybody that listens to us. But can we be clear and say, no matter the outcome of the game, you and I are still going to be friends?
Yo.
How many people tweeted at us about the game? Eventually, I was just like, I don't know what you're expecting. He's a Cowboys fan. I'm a Niners fan. We knew that before we started doing the podcast. It just so happened they didn't play, but
any meaningful games,
right? They played regular season, but we started this after Owens on the star, like after all that. But I don't know what people are looking for the two of us. We could still gonna be friends no matter who wins.
Yeah.
Now, granted, for me, it's better when the 49ers win. I'm gonna say that. Because for me, I'm like, look, I know a lot of Cowboys fans. I know a lot of Packers fans. We can't lose to those. If we lose on Sunday, I don't know any Eagles fans.
Yeah. Courtney Harden's a big Eagles guy we had on. But not a whole lot. I don't know a whole lot.
Look, I love Cowboys fans. I ain't gonna be like those, the people with the memes. Y'all still them boys. Look, y'all been ride or die for 30 years, and the return on investment has not been there. And I know it sounds like I'm giving a backhanded compliment, but I'm just saying, Cowboy fans have been ride or die, and it just hasn't been there. Because, Vinny, did anything happen Sunday that surprised you? When Dak threw them 2 interceptions, were you like, I didn't see that coming?
I wish I could have been, but that was one of the concerns. Love Dak, love him. Was Team Dak when it was the Dak Romo situation, and
right,
because Romo, you never could trust him because he would throw them just boneheaded picks at the end of games. And so they moved on from Romo, and I'm like, cool, Dak is in here. Dak needs to get his money. Jared Goff got paid. You heard me say, look, Dak, you need to pay Dak. You're paying all.
You got to pay him, yeah.
Because, and Dak and Zeke came in together. Cool. 2 pieces to build around. All right, let's go. And then this year, You miss a third of the season, 5 games, and you still leading the league in picks. And the homie Cooper Rush went 4-1. That kept him afloat. If he goes 2-3, like you think he would, who knows what happens, to the season. So you lead the league in picks. I go to Green Bay. We up 28-14. Never, ever lost a game when leading by 2 scores in the fourth quarter.
Vinny bringing the receipts, man.
195-0, and I watched us give up 17 straight in Lambeau to lose 31-28. The next game, he balls out. Oh, he looks good. He's okay. Maybe he just wasn't seeing the field well in Green Bay. He's throwing good passes. He's throwing dimes. He's lighting up the scoreboard. That was against Minnesota. They can't stop a nosebleed. So that maybe should have told me, oh, you lighten up the Vikings and beating Kirk Cousins because that ain't no defense. So we throw all these picks all year, couple picks a year. There's times when dudes drop pick sixes. Washington and Jacksonville should have been more than 2. And then and so okay, beat the fool out of Tampa Bay. Great. Tom Brady finally has a loss to the Cowboys. Because look, you lost to them to start the season. You start off 0-1 because you lost to Tampa. All right, great. You beat them. But my whole thing, my Katie will tell you how you feeling about the game. How you feel about the 49ers. I'm like, look, San Francisco ain't Tampa Bay. That's how I feel about it. My sister texts me, how you feeling? I was like, look, this ain't Tampa Bay. That's how I kept saying. And last year, y'all kind of wore Dallas down with the physicality. We couldn't handle it. They kind of made a concerted effort defensively we're going to go and show that we can hold up and not get worn down and not going to run on us like they did. You look at the box score, you just watched the game. Debo, McCaffrey didn't go off. Look at it from my perspective. CeeDee Lamb has over 100 yards receiving. Just on those 2 things alone, you probably, if you hadn't watched the game, if you hear that, you probably be like, oh, the Cowboys probably won. If you stuck in the airport, just had somebody walk up to you, somebody walk up to you and say, McCaffrey and Debo were held in check. CeeDee Lamb had 9 catches, 120 whatever yards. You're probably getting a little sick feeling in your stomach thinking, oh, that don't sound too good.
But here's the thing. Like I said, I watched the first half with a 49ers fan. He had his Bosa jersey on. We're talking. And I think 6-6 or maybe y'all were up. I can't remember. We had this conversation. I was like, man.
Couldn't even be up 7-6 because Maher, he didn't miss it because it took him 3 days to kick it, so he got it blocked. But had it not been blocked, it was still going to be wide left, so he still would have missed it.
And so his comment was what I saw on 49ers Twitter. Don't worry. The Cowboys are going to do something amazingly dumb. Like, that was what the 49er fans were banking on. Something, and we're going to get to the last play. But for me, like I told you forever ago when it came to Jimmy G, no matter how good your defense is, no matter how many weapons you have, your quarterback got to make some throws. You don't win in the postseason without your quarterback making some throws. Well, I should say the exception to the rule was Jimmy G's 8 attempts against Green Bay a couple of years ago, which, I try to talk in like, well, we was running the ball. No, man, like eight pass attempts, that's not going to get it done. But anyway, I've been saying, and I have, quarterbacks got to make some throws. If Purdy can make throws, I like the team's chances. He had 200 plus yards passing, no touchdowns, but no turnovers.
See,
and that is enough. I said it way back when, I think when we were 3-4. I'm like, I've tweeted at 4, like, if Jimmy G, who's a quarterback, doesn't do anything stupid, this team's going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You know I said that.
Mm-hmm.
I never changed. Brock Purdy, I'm like, when he became the starter, I'm like, well, if he don't do stupid stuff, sorry, I know I apologize. But if he don't do nothing stupid, we should be good. And yay, verily, like the throw to Kittle, it was a good throw. And the catch was an even better catch.
The catch should never happen because the catch, Trayvon Diggs can't escape this either. It was a good throw. Maybe he should have caught it clean, but he bobbled it. Trayvon Diggs, all pro last year, double-digit picks. Not as many this year because they kind of threw away from him. But my man is allergic to contact. He doesn't like to tackle. George Kittle, I looked it up, went to the 49ers website for the show. George Kittle is 6'4", 250. Now, yes, he's bigger than you. He's coming with a full head of steam. I get it. But you can't whiff and not hit him at all, Trayvon Diggs. If you bump him, you hit his arm, you put a little shoulder into his gut, you hit him anywhere, you separate him from the ball. Now, if you whiff on CeeDee Lamb, who's as big as my pinky, I can see that. That's a little skinny dude. Maybe you miss him. But if you come in with your head down and just I jumped up when it happened because you just saw this blur go right by Kittle. I'm not saying because you can't even do it now. I'm not saying that you Ronnie Lott him and knock his head off. I'm just saying make a little bit of contact with him and that catch does not happen because he is bobbling it. Yeah. You just hit him anywhere and separate him from the ball. That one is about as frustrating as probably the pick because you got a kicker you don't trust, which leads you to going for it down there when maybe you let old boy kick. And then Dak is throwing picks down there. Was it Warner? The one that got deflected?
Yeah. Fred Warner that was covering CeeDee. But your boy was wide open on that.
On the first one?
No, this was the incomplete pass that Warner deflected.
Because the first
I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really watch. I wasn't really watching, but
he tried to squeeze that first one. There was a dude that jumped in front of it and missed, and it deflected to the linebacker. So what are you seeing? Right. How do you even try to throw that? And the first one, I think he just underthrew it. Gave the 49ers the ball at the red zone. Y'all had the ball at virtually the 20-yard line, and the defense held to a field goal. I'm like, that's a win right there. So let's not do this stupid stuff anymore. But we had and losing Pollard sucked too. That really hurt.
Right.
But
because my concern as we head to Philadelphia is Philadelphia is the other team that plays how we play. We're going to punch you in the mouth for 60 minutes. Now, what you do with that is on you, but we're going to punch you in the mouth. And when the Niners had to drive, eat up clock, it was like a 7-8 minute drive, even though it ended up in a field goal, that's just, we're going to keep pounding on you. We're going to keep leaning on you. And not being a Cowboys fan, it just looked like the Cowboys they are so focused on beating the 49ers that they do stupid stuff. It's like when we watch Kentucky versus Louisville basketball or even football, it's like, what are you doing? You could be in this game, but you're killing yourself. Now, as a 49ers fan, I'm happy about that, but I don't know how you fix that. Is McCarthy the right dude?
I've never been just rock solid sure of that. I don't know which last play was dumber. The one from last year where you running around scrambling, trying to get lined up.
This year.
The one from this year where Zeke is a center and gets steamrolled. I don't know which one was dumber. I put out a poll. You probably saw my poll. Which ending was dumber?
This year. Because this year, the 49ers took a timeout. Like, I can't believe, y'all believe what they doing? took a timeout, and it came out the same thing. I saw the clip. I was like, that is like from the formation to the actual execution, I have no idea what they were trying to do. Like you threw it to a dude that had defender, right? Like what are you doing? I don't understand what they were trying to do. I don't. You may as well just put your offensive line and just play. I have no idea.
And
that's got to be, hey, if you Cowboys fans, you got to be sick because, like, come on. Because, like I said at the top, it's not as if the 49ers have been, world beaters out here.
Yeah.
They've been one-score games both years.
Yeah.
These last two.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's been, and we've had chances to salt the game away. Last year, Jimmy G does not make it for a first down. This year, we get the ball back. I'm like, hey, just run out the clock, and we got to punt it back with like 50 seconds left.
And I almost thought they should have went for it on the fourth down with 2 minutes left. I'm surprised they even got the ball back.
Right.
With 50 seconds left. I'm like, we punting right now?
Because I didn't think they was going to get the ball back after the punt.
I sure didn't. Because as their defense held up better, but San Francisco did kind of rock them a little bit on, to sustain some drives. They got a few little running lanes and, enough to kill time and they didn't just run wild, but they did, as your boy Shanahan said, kind of wear them down just enough when they needed to. And so that was like, why are we giving them the ball back now?
So I'm looking. We're gonna take care of your NFC East foes. I still feel confident in my team, or else why would I be? I'm not going in thinking we're gonna lose, but I feel confident. Now Philadelphia, like I said, it's gonna be a test.
So Jalen Purdy got more playoff wins than Jalen Hurts now, right? Because that was Hurts' first win last week because they got stomped by Tampa last year. So that was, Brock got 2 playoff wins to Hurts' 1.
And for me, I get it. Philadelphia looked tough, but I'm like, it was the damn Giants. The Giants looked tough because they beat Minnesota, and Philly looked tough. And you could probably say that about, the 49ers beating I think the Cowboys are better than all those other teams in NFC East, even Philadelphia, as far as talented quarterback and that kind of stuff. But I am concerned that we're going to punch Philadelphia and they're going to keep punching back, and I don't know what's going to happen. But I still feel 49ers going to Super Bowl. And this is what hit me. 6 NFC championship appearances in 12 seasons. That's pretty darn good. We've been to 3 out of 4.
Going back to, 2010, 2011?
Yeah. We went to 3 straight with Alex Smith, went to 1, lost to the Giants in 2011, and then went to the Super Bowl with Kaepernick, the Beyonce Super Bowl, and then went to Seattle in the NFC Championship that year. And then Super Bowl, missed it in the last 2 years.
Man.
We've been to more championship games than anybody else.
Wow.
And so I know a lot of folks like to our glory days, and our glory days were in the 80s. I mean, we haven't won since 94. I'll give you that. But y'all got to stop pretending like the Niners are just some bum-ass team. Like, 3 out of 4 title games is pretty darn good. And the 1 year we missed, Garoppolo got hurt, Kittle got hurt. Like, it was the year after the Super Bowl, and everybody got hurt. Because I think we talked about it then. I'm like, man, I don't even know. Everybody's hurt. Like, we just bringing stuff, bringing people off the thing. So I feel pretty good. Most Niner fans, like, we're playing with house money. You're playing with a rookie quarterback who has looked like a rookie at times. But again, as long as he doesn't make the stupid turnover, I get it. Asking a rookie, it's a lot. You talked about we listened to Bobani Jones. I get it. Putting faith in Purdy, but what choice do I have as a fan? There's no plan B.
Yeah, sure don't.
So you got to, and that's what most 49ers fans, even when Jimmy G was the quarterback, it's like, Well, what choice do we have? We
Yeah.
got to just roll with this dude.
Yeah.
And so the defense and the other skill position players, like, hey, just don't make a mistake, dog. That's all you got. Don't make a mistake. We got you.
We talked about going from plan A to B to C, but Cameron, as far as Kentucky basketball, 49ers probably, I mean, maybe not even an argument, probably go from first string to second string to third string better than anybody in the league because out of necessity.
Well, and I, Shanahan, he's a finalist for Coach of the Year, and he may not win. My only argument is, I get it. They are loaded. The 49ers are loaded at most places. When you look at the talent that we have, you could almost assume Kittle is on that Hall of Fame trajectory. He's right there with Kelsey when it comes to numbers. McCaffrey will probably have a case. On the defensive side, you got to think Bosa's on that trajectory. Fred Warner's on that trajectory. So they've got talent. And I get what people are saying. Mike Tomlin did a credible job not having a losing season with whatever's going on in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Daboll for the Giants, I get it. My only thing is, how many teams, no matter how much talent they have, how many teams can go 3 deep at quarterback and keep winning?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Like, we've kept this thing going with the absolute last dude picked in the draft.
Yo.
He was the first. Purdy is the first Mr. Irrelevant to throw a touchdown pass in the NFL. First one. Like, yeah, I was like, okay.
I thought Tom Brady was Mr. Irrelevant.
No, he wasn't the last pick. He was 6th round pick.
Oh, okay. I thought, okay.
No,
He was.
Purdy was the last dude. Like, like it might have been on ESPN3 when his name got called, because I just looked at my phone like, oh, we got Purdy. Okay, cool. Kept it moving. So a dude that you didn't think was going to be part of this is, again, you can say, of course, the car is a Corvette, but giving the keys to your 16-year-old and expecting them to do something with it is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't think that Shanahan will win, but hey, he's been to 3 out of 4 title games. We've changed quarterbacks. Like, whatever he's doing, the 49ers are in the mix. And most 49ers are like, that's what we want. Like we talk about Coach Cal, you keep knocking on the door, you'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
Beat Philadelphia, which is not out of the realm of possibility. Get the Super Bowl. If Mahomes is banged up, I take my chances with the Chiefs. And the Bengals, I'm going to tell you something, Benny.
Uh-oh.
If the 49ers beat the Bengals.
For a third time?
For a third time.
Oh.
With their fake Joe Cool.
Oh.
I am going to be ridiculous. Like, if y'all thought
we clowning
that my dancing and my shenanigans when the Niners beat the Packers were something, if you thought my meme tweeting and my posts were bad when we beat the Cowboys, if the good Lord allows it to happen and the 49ers beat the Bengals for a third time, I'm going to lose a lot of friends.
You got more smoke for the Bengals than for the Packers? That's what you're saying. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
Oh, because, there's so many Bengals fans within the Kentucky community.
Yeah.
And I've been very upfront. January 22nd, 1989 is when I became a diehard 49ers fan. Like I told you, and it bears repeating. I've been a Jerry fan for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I had Jerry Rice jersey, 49ers cap, but I was like, Jerry's my guy, whatever. And all these Cincinnati fans, Super Bowl 23, icky shuffling in my face. Telling me the Bengals going to do this, that, and the other. The Bengals going to win. That's what they told me.
Ooh.
And then, yea, verily, it came to pass. Super Bowl 23 happened, and the 49ers won. And I was like, I am 49er for life. Look, I brought it up all the time. We be talking about something. One of these Cincinnati fans would be like, yeah, Abe Lincoln was the 16th president. I'd be like, are you sure? Because you told me the Bengals going to beat the 49ers, so I don't know if I can trust what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure? Well, yeah. Well, you wasn't sure about the Super Bowl. I'm just asking. So, Vinny,
Mm-hmm.
is it Super Bowl? What is it, 55? I don't know what we're up to now. I have no idea.
57?
Is it 57?
I think so.
Whatever it is, if the 49ers beat the Bengals,
Mm. Got to give it to them, all of them.
Absolutely. But the Packers fans, I ain't too worried about the Packers fans because you and I grew up when the Packers was terrible.
Yeah.
With Don Majkowski and those guys. Like, I remember
James Lofton played for them. Touring the stadium, James Lofton is in the Ring of Honor up there. Played for Green Bay from 78 to 86. All I knew was what he did with the Bills. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame. All I knew was what he did with the Bills. Even the tour guide, and I love that tour guide at Green Bay. His name was Steve. He was at the Ice Bowl in 67 as a teenager. So this gentleman is late 60s, early 70s. Even when he's going through Packer history, he was like, well, the 70s and 80s, wasn't much going on here good with us. See, so and then back to the 90s, and but he went from the 60s. We had a couple bad decades. We sucked. Back to the 90s with Favre and all. So yeah, the 70s and the 80s Packers, man, they were trash.
Right. And look, I get it. It's been a while since your Cowboys have won. That's now the one thing you don't see me jump on board about is people talking about this is how long it's been since the Cowboys won a championship. Because damn it, I know y'all won the year after we like. I know you. Hey, you've never seen me. You've never heard me say that. I talk about making an NFC title game, making it to a Super Bowl, but you ain't never seen me talk about look at this Dallas Cowboys championship. I ain't never said that.
Your last Super Bowl win is VHS, just like ours.
That's my point. That is my point.
Whew.
And I'm just hoping if we make
for that alone, I'm gonna have to pull Philadelphia.
But probably because I was gonna be ugly. When we was up 10 points to Mahomes and the Chiefs, I was getting ready to text you about that. I was ready to text that meme to you. And then they got a score, and I was like, uh-oh. And it was 24-20 or whatever it was, and Jimmy G came running out. I'm like, uh-oh. This dude ain't about it. This dude ain't about it. This moment, this dude ain't about it, man. So my hope is Purdy be about it a little bit. Just be about it.
Yeah. And they said Jimmy probably won't be there for Sunday. It's been 8 weeks since his foot was broke. If y'all win and make it to the Super Bowl, that'll give him 2 more weeks. Are they trying to maybe go with Jimmy over Brock? Should they?
No, you can't switch it up. It's going to be interesting what happens next year. I've said, hey, if Brock gets you to a Super Bowl, I mean, you kind of have to, because it's not like Jeff Hostetler, they kind of turned it on for the Giants years and years ago, or Doug Williams was not the starter that whole season either. But I think you have to assess, because keeping all three, I don't see that being a possibility. But if you can keep Purdy, who's cheap right now, and Jimmy G, who's on a team-friendly deal, that makes Trey Lance the odd man out. And I hate that because I love Trey Lance.
Never got to.
Or maybe I'm talking myself into him, but because the 49ers draft so well and develop, that gives you a little bit of flexibility. So maybe you get some of those picks back for Trey Lance and you roll with Purdy and let Jimmy G be, an understudy. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Just saw this coming out too. Kentucky trying to do to Tennessee what Tennessee does to Kentucky, because Tennessee always has every big event when Kentucky's in town. So when Tennessee comes to Rupp, February the 18th, it's a 96, 97, 98 reunion for when the Vols are in town. All three squads are going to be back. Players, managers, coaches, whoever. So there you go. And they'll do that when the Vols are in town, because Bernard King and Allen Houston and Chris Lofton and Ernie Grunfeld, everybody gets recognized when Kentucky's in town. Ray Mears and all that. So good to do a little something when Tennessee comes to town. So.
And we should be doing more of it, like wearing the 93 throwbacks. We should be doing. We should be doing more of that. That's the one thing I know we complain about so much as Kentucky fans. Like, woe is us with all these wins and championships, and woe is us. But I would love to see more, because honestly, almost every year is an anniversary for a memorable team.
Recognizing something, yeah.
This is the 30th anniversary of the 93 Final Four team.
Mm-hmm.
It's 25 for the 98 team.
Nope.
It's whatever it is for the 78 team.
45. Yeah.
Dating myself. But you could every year could be something.
5 for the 58 team.
Right. And so you could do that, I think.
75 for the 48 team.
Right. No, I mean that's true. I think the nod to the throwback uniforms and have those teams out there, I think would be great.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this history. We've got these teams. It's been 20 years since the 2003 team, which was a great team.
Yo, it was.
So I would love to see more of that, embracing the history and bringing those folks back. I've got no problem with that.
Yo.
Like how we brought Joe B. Hall kind of back into the fold after he was cast aside years ago.
Yeah.
Do that. So I'm glad they're bringing those teams back, but I would love to see each team individually be honored. Like, because I don't think that the 96 team has gotten their due. I was very disappointed a couple of years ago we didn't celebrate that 25th.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking some years ago, I'm like, oh man, you hit that 25th, you got 96 one year, then 97. That team is very underrated.
Mm-hmm.
That team is very underrated. The 97 team, and of course the 98 team, which people do underrate. I talked about this today on Twitter with Kentucky Clips, talking about the game against Stanford in the Final Four, that overtime game. That's the best game nobody ever talks about.
Yeah.
I think what hurts the 98 team as far as how good they were playing at the time is that they played Stanford and Utah, and since then Stanford and Utah have been garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Now take it back 25 years, they were top 10 teams.
Mm-hmm. Sure were.
But you're like, oh, Utah, we should have won. No.
They were there every year, man. They was.
And when you think about it, let's see. So 96 beat Syracuse. That's got a little cachet. That's got a little juice to it.
Mm-hmm.
97 you lose to Arizona. Oh, okay. 98 beating Utah. I got no juice. And to finally get to 2012 and you beat Kansas, that's got some. Kentucky, Kansas has got juice.
Mm-hmm.
And even in 78, beating Duke, that was before Duke became Duke.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we got a lot of, you look at a lot of these Final Fours, you think about 97 beating Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to, and I've got to remind myself, like, well, Minnesota's pretty good then. And even 96, UMass.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a part of my thing with some of these people talking about Coach Cal only does good with top when he's got the best recruits. Cal at UMass gave the best basketball team I've ever seen the business with Marcus Camby and dudes that went pro in something other than basketball.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it did.
I need to find online that first game when UMass won.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I did rewatch the UMass Final Four game. Guys, UMass could have won that one. Except Anthony Epps and I think it was Tony Delk kind of pulled that thing together. I've always said the worst games that the 96 team played were in the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
That Final Four game was just disjointed and whatever. And then title game, if your man TD don't go, 7 for whatever from 3-point range, that's a different conversation. Like, it was great that we were that deep all year, but hey, we needed one dude to be the dude, and TD was the dude.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, long story short, I am glad that we're bringing those teams back because honestly, and this sounds silly to say, that is kind of a forgotten part of Kentucky history.
Mm-hmm.
When you look back, and I want to say, is Delk the last guy to go up into the rafters?
Until Mike Pratt goes up this next week, I think so.
Right.
I think so.
And so you look from 96 to now, the All-Americans, the SEC. Again, we have kind of talked about this before. I don't know the process exactly, but not having Tayshaun Prince, who got his high school jersey retired, and I quote tweeted that, I was like, hey, Rupp got to be next. Tayshaun was that dude.
Mm-hmm.
Tayshaun got to go up. Bogans has got to go up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, I would do that for those guys.
So yeah, Mike Pratt going up for the Florida game February the 4th. 2 weeks later, then it's the 96, 97, 98 reunion.
Hopefully we got a plan to recognize those guys, because that's I mean, again, I hate using North Carolina as a good thing, but they got criteria. If you do this, this is your honor. And you would think most outstanding player of the Final Four, that puts Shep up there. SEC player of the year, that's putting Ulis up there. That's putting AD up there. That's, I just, when you look at the retired jerseys, and there's going to be a lot because we're Kentucky. I've heard people talk about, you don't want to cheapen it. Well, you don't want to just ignore 30 years of basketball.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's either one extreme to the other. It's cheapened or it's so exclusive that nothing gets done.
Right. And I just don't want to end up here 10 years down the road and nobody from 98 on is up there.
Mm-hmm. And then start to put Cal players in, and then it's, you find yourself overlooking and, people getting forgotten about. Kind of like when all those wide receivers got backlogged for the NFL. Andre Reed should have been in, and took Art Monk forever to get in, stuff like that. That's when you get into that kind of situation.
Right. Because whatever the criteria is, it could be a situation where 10 years down the road, there's no Anthony Davis and there's no Oxford Sheboy.
Yeah.
And if the honor is to recognize great players in Kentucky history and you don't have those two dudes,
no point.
What are we doing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's just a glaring omission. One, Mike Pratt should have been up there for what he meant to the program.
All the contributions he made.
Right. So for me, you've got to put dudes up there.
Mm-hmm.
Tayshaun should be up there. Bogans should be up there.
Mm-hmm. Bogan's fourth in scoring all time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Come on now.
Personally, I'd like to see Joe Crawford get some recognition.
Yep.
Because he was here through some lean times.
Mm-hmm.
And but you got anyway, we could go back and forth, but I could give you about 10 dudes that should be up there that played shortly after we left. But again, I've never really got a concrete answer on the criteria.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What is the criteria to go up there? Because I think you can be recognized by your team or school without being Hall of Fame worthy.
Right.
There's that difference between your Ring of Honor and the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
There are dudes and dudettes, if you want, that mean something.
Yeah.
I on the women's side, I don't know, outside of Valerie Still, I don't know if they've got anybody else that they've given that honor to.
Mm-hmm.
But got to put Ryan Howard up there. She was like all SEC for 4 years, and I think All America for 2. So I don't know the process. I don't know what you have to do to get recognized. But I keep saying, in 10 years, if there's no Anthony Davis and there's no Oscar Tshiebwe, then take them all down, because it doesn't mean what we purport it to mean.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, going back to that Green Bay trip, there's a Packers Hall of Fame that you can tour that's, Packers-centric, Packers to death. But as far as their Ring of Honor in the stadium, they only put dudes up in the Ring of Honor that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's like Brett Favre, Bart Starr, Reggie White, blah. It's like 6 names, I think, if I remember right, in there. But the Packers Hall of Fame got everything. But everybody ain't getting up in the Lambeau Ring. You got to be in Canton to be up there. Or something exclusive.
But everybody's rules are a little bit different.
Yeah,
because
they got stuff in place.
Right, but for me, is Daryl Johnston, is he a Hall of Famer? I don't think so. But would I put him in the Ring of Fame? I would.
Mm-hmm.
I would do that, right? Like, you can acknowledge this person was very important to us, maybe not Hall of Fame, but for what we did, this is great. Like Brent Jones, I think, is in the 49ers Hall of Fame, Ring of Honor, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't put him in the big Hall of Fame. Dwight Clark. Yes. Is it because of that one play? Probably. But it's the organization saying, like with Franco Harris, when he passed away, has it been a month ago? I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked about what the Steelers were before the Immaculate Reception.
Mm-hmm.
There's that dividing line between being a trash franchise and then winning 4 out of the next 8 Super Bowls or whatever it was. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's that dividing line. There's the Niners before the catch. Yeah, Brody and, okay.
Yeah.
And then there's 5 out of the next, 14, 15 Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can honor that. And when Kentucky fans try to push back, I'm like, look, we understand nuance when we want to.
Yep.
We talk about championships in Kentucky and the Kentucky way. And I still always say the most beloved Kentucky team ever, the Unforgettables, didn't even reach the Final Four.
Right. Mm-hmm. Got a banner, though.
Are we recognizing those guys? Because Richie Farmer, he wasn't the best shooting guard we've ever had in Kentucky.
Right.
Sean Woods, Feldhouse, Pelfrey, are we honoring them because of their numbers, because of what they accomplished? No. What are we saying? You guys meant so much to us, meant so much to the university, to the team, to the fans.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to recognize you.
Yep.
So when I get into it with other Kentucky fans, that's not what we do here. The hell it's not. What are you talking about? You can't go into Rupp Arena, look at the Unforgettables, and tell me we don't do. And it's not that you are okay with it, we recognize you dudes kept us going through some dark times.
Yeah. Pulled us out of a mess.
You gave, and the thing is, they gave us everything they had, played above their station.
Right.
My contention to opposing fans is the Leitner shot game shouldn't have been that close. When you look at the roster, because we talked about Marcus Camby and a bunch of dudes that should have gone pro something else.
Mm-hmm.
That was Mashburn and some dudes.
Yeah. And don't let Mash foul out. Who knows?
Right. Can you believe he fouled out against Duke and then fouled out against
In the Fab Five game.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
But we understand nuance to some extent.
Cal said it yet last night. You might have to come off the bench. Don't mean I don't love you, but you might have to come off the bench. We're talking about Severe. That's what it is. It is, I love you, gonna be here for you for as long as I'm alive in life, but you might have to just come off the bench. That's nuance. If that ain't, I don't know what is.
Well, and with that, I put this out, and a couple people said, TB, that's not half bad. We all had the perfect lineup for this team we thought was the perfect lineup. Wallace, and then Reeves, Frederick, Toppin, and Oscar, right? But my contention was, again, how do you get to that lineup? You've got to find a way to get Severe on board with what you need to do. Well, the coach should just say, yeah. The coach could just come in and say, "We doing this. You've lost the team." So you need Severe to buy into the new role. And people could talk about, well, you do what's best for the team. He's led the league in assists 2 years, working on a third.
Mm-hmm.
Asking him not to start isn't just some flippant thing. The dude's got feelings. The dude's got some pride, right?
Yep.
So it takes some work to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And now that he's bought into this change of pace, 20 minutes a night person, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's different. Like if you can bring that dude off the bench, now you're doing something. Because as we've learned, bench dudes matter. The NBA recognizes it and says 6 men matter.
Mm-hmm.
Manu Ginobili is going to the Hall of Fame or is in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know if he started any games for the Spurs.
Mm. Yeah, it might not have.
But so we are here 35 years later, and you and I still know about Vinnie Johnson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? There's, Tony Kukoc was the 6th man in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
There's a value to that. So if Severe's on board, I like the way this team shakes out.
Yep.
Because like we said, it's about trust. It's about knowing your role and believing your teammates are going to do their thing. Because if Oscar just has to do, 13 and 17, it's not like, I thought he played bad against Texas A&M. You're like, oh, he's got 17 rebounds. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But Oscar and Jacob last night combined still didn't do what Oscar did by himself against Georgia. Like last night, they're like 20, 27 and 23 combined, and he did 37 and 24 the other night by himself. So
and what we said earlier with cameras, last night's game was a typical Kentucky game in the SEC.
Yeah, it's one of those.
You're better than this team. They're at home. They're all riled up. It's close for a little bit. You pull that stretch on, and then it's like, okay, we just gotta, you start clock watching a little bit to move on to something else.
Yeah.
That's what Kentucky basketball has been for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
What has kept Kentucky basketball elite is not losing a lot of games to teams we shouldn't lose to.
Mhm.
That's why St. Peter stands out. That's where Robert Morris stands out. VMI stands out. There's not a lot of, because even Cal's first 7 or 8 years, you look at, yes, they didn't win championships every year, but again, the John Wall team, they lost to a team that made the Final Four. So it wasn't like a first round exit, right?
Yeah.
2011, you lose in the Final Four to eventual national champion. That's
Right.
not a bad loss.
Mm-hmm.
2012 win, 2013. All right, that's a mulligan season. But 2014, you get to the title game.
Nope.
2015, you lose in the Final Four. Even 2016, was that the Indiana? That was a missed seeding.
Yeah.
That was missed. That's when the NCAA said, "Yeah, you won the SEC championship, but it doesn't matter." That was poor seeding on their part.
And we lost to current Laker Thomas Bryant.
I do love it when the Lakers account says "Go TB." I'm like, oh, okay, I like that.
Oh, well,
So,
yeah.
Outside of St. Peter's, there's not a lot of head scratching.
Mhm.
Like, I've got to Google who this team was we lost to.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe you say Kansas State, in 2018, maybe, but there hasn't been a whole lot of that, and there hasn't been a lot of that in Kentucky history. That's why those stand out. UABs, some
Right. Yeah.
but that's not how it is.
Mm-hmm. Real quick before we hop off, y'all talked about on Round the Shots the other day. You and Van were talking about how much of a priority football is. He said, because we're going to take a guy 6'6", we're going to have him doing sets like a lineman instead of, everybody else focusing on basketball. We're going to take a 6'8" guy, and we're going to make him a tight end or defensive end. Even with all of that focus on football that the South has done, it's still been enough ballers to do a documentary coming out Monday on the SEC Network called Southern Hoops that's going to take you through the history of however they do it. I've seen some being skeptical of basketball in the South. Of course, Kentucky's going to be featured in there. Nolan Richardson in Arkansas is going to be featured in there. Patino. It's going to be Kentucky heavy. Tennessee with their Bernie and Ernie and whoever else they would. Georgia with Dominique Barkley. So even though the South is all about football, the basketball still messed around and has done some stuff through the years.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you saw, there's a documentary coming out on Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, formerly Chris Jackson.
Okay.
I saw that today. It's going to be on Showtime. Talking about that dude was a problem. And if you're LSU, you got to be sick because you've got 3 all-time greats and not a lot to show for it. Shaq, Pistol Pete, Chris Jackson,
and Bob Pettit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
I want to say a few years ago, somebody in the SEC did like a players bracket, and I've always said this: we've had great players at Kentucky, but talking to my in-laws, my family, is like, we don't have a Michael Jordan, or a dude that was a dude. We don't have a Penny Hardaway, and I think AD can maybe be that guy, and maybe you've got Dan Issel, but we don't have a lot of dudes.
I remember hoping Mash would just kill it in the NBA just so we kind of.
He had a solid.
Yeah, I remember he dropped that 50-point game on the Bulls with the Mavs, but as far as just being on that level consistently, no. But I know what you're saying. I'm right there with you.
I mean, you look at the NBA's 50, the NBA's 75. Yeah. There's at the 75 is just AD.
Right.
And you look at other places, they got more than that. But again, we as fans keep saying that the 2015 team, that's our typical Kentucky team. And it isn't. The 38-1, that's not the typical, that is abnormal. Our Kentucky, the team we have now is a typical Kentucky team. What do I mean by that? You got one dude that's all-American caliber. That's Oscar. You got a couple other dudes that are all-conference caliber. I think you could put severe. I think you put Kaysen on that.
Mm-hmm.
And like last night, you're not losing to the Vanderbilts, right? That's why we've been to more Elite Eights than anybody else. That to me is a typical Kentucky team. You get to the Elite Eight, and you see what happens.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean that's just how it goes. But yeah, I'm going to watch that documentary. It's got to be Kentucky heavy if you're talking about Southern basketball. You got to talk about when they decided to let Negroes play.
Right. Yep.
That's part of it.
We'll start with Kerry Wallace and then go on from
right. So you got to talk about that, but you can't talk about Southern basketball or SEC basketball without the team that has been doing it for 80 years.
That's right.
If it's less than half Kentucky, I'll be mad.
Yeah. Yeah. So Monday.
And if y'all get mad about it, other fans, then just win at least half of the SEC championship. Just half. I ain't even saying that you got to the rest of the conference got to overtake. I'm just saying just win half.
Exactly. So 7-part documentary. So we'll see how thorough they are and all that. But I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see what happens on the first one.
Absolutely.
Come Monday. But we had a lot of fun, man. I tried to take my medicine. Congratulations to the Niners. Another NFC championship trip. Y'all got us again. Oh yeah, let it fly. FTTB or whatever y'all say out there. And we'll see y'all.
I like how you say whatever we say. Like you ain't sending them tweets every time we beat the Cowboys. Whatever.
And you don't have to wait. Y'all the first game on Sunday, so y'all gonna just
I'm stoked, man. My house gonna be nice and clean after the Kansas game on Saturday.
That's right. That's right.
I'll tell you this though. I would rather lose this Sunday than lose the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I ain't never been as just dejected as losing the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because because you get those accounts. What's your worst sports loss? And I'm like, Super Bowl. You're like, oh, not against Wisconsin. No, I mean that hurt. Don't get me wrong, that hurt, but Super Bowl's different, man.
Yeah.
Super Bowl's a thing. But if we make it, we better win. Because if it's against Cincinnati,
can't wait. Can't wait.
Ooh, buddy.
Can't wait. But thanks again to Cameron Drummond for coming on, and he's with me, still sobering up from that loss, getting through it. We'll see what y'all do. We'll see what the Final Four of the NFL is talking about, and we'll talk about this Kansas game and all that stuff next week, man. And watch us on Roku and YouTube and Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeart, and wherever you get your podcast. And we'll be back next week for my homie TB. This is Vinny Hardy. Another episode, Cats Talk Wednesday. We'll catch y'all next week, baby.